A warm welcome from Germany, actually. This is our beautiful capital city, and the topic for today is to guide you through the access of consumer healthcare brand in this largest EU pharma market in Germany. What's the size of the prize? So we're talking here about a 9.3 billion euro self-medication market in pharmacies only, and that's growing about 2% year on year. What's interesting to understand is Germany was one of the first countries to allow online pharmacies, and that has grown meanwhile to a 16% share. So out of these 9.3 billion, 16% are online pharmacy sales, and that's growing 7% and got an acceleration now to the COVID crisis as well. In addition to that, there's another 1.4 billion in self-medication market in drugstores. So let's have a look into the key players on this huge market. So in total, more than 10 billion. That's 19,000 independent pharmacies. Unique thing for Germany is they are all independent, so no chains allowed. And but they do cooperate in terms of purchasing products, but also in terms of marketing. In addition to these 19,000 independent pharmacies, there's only 20 relevant online pharmacies meanwhile. We started out with 2,900 who had a license to do online pharmacy sales, but meanwhile 20 are left over. There's 7 wholesalers and another 4,500 drugstores. So in this marketplace, it's a highly competitive market. We have 700 healthcare companies competing. They do have, on average, 20, but the minimum required sales reps of 10 to deal with all these 19,000 pharmacies. So for national coverage, you might require 20 plus sales reps. And in terms of advertising spend in consumer healthcare alone, that's 1.3 billion euros advertising spend on an annual base. Also that a signal for increased competition here. It's 15% more spend year on year. And we've seen that over the past 7 to 8 years now, that this double-digit growth in media spend is happening. Interestingly, it's more classic TV and print and less so digital. So in terms of digital, Germany is probably underdeveloped relative to other markets. But there's 200 brands advertising, and if you're thinking of a budget that is required for getting the word out about your brand, you should consider probably 1 million euro TV spend annually. That's the average, and an addition of 800,000 euros in print. So quite a significant investment in order to get your brand to the consumers here. Let me discuss a bit the various roles and the needs of players in case you are thinking of launching one of your brands into Germany. So in terms of pharmacies, clearly their role is to make the products available, but also they play a role in advertising and promotion, and clearly also in terms of recommendation. So recommending products, but this doesn't really happen very often, clearly. One key learning a lot of foreign or new entries into the market have is that it is not sufficient to have the recommendation of the pharmacists. It's all about being present above the line, so having advertising also outside pharmacies. So wholesalers, also a very frequent misperception here is they're just distributors and logistics partners. They have no interest in selling a specific brand or supporting a specific brand. They are basically just shipping boxes. The corporations, as I said earlier, they do some distribution and logistics, but predominantly do some in-store advertising and promotion for their members. And then last but not least, the online pharmacies, clearly they make their products available, but they see themselves meanwhile as more than just a pharmacy. It's more an information platform where they also try and tend to differentiate themselves from others by providing, for example, scientific advice, etc. So much more like a regular pharmacy and less so like the likes of Amazon or similar. So what are the needs of these? What do these players expect from someone who is entering with a new brand into these channels? Clearly, margin and rebates and sales allowances for the pharmacies. In case you want to be really successful in pharmacies, it's we have seen only as an exception that there's detailing, there's brands without detailing. In-person visits to pharmacies have succeeded, so that's really the exception. The norm is that all the companies, or most of the companies, do have an in-person detailing with a sales force. They do also expect advertising and promotion and some training, and that's not only scientific training but also training in terms of supporting the pharmacy team in their sellout activities. So enabling them to have a proper sales pitch for your brand. That's kind of expected as well. Wholesalers, clearly, it's all about margins, have a reasonable margin. I'll talk in a minute about how high that should be, but have margins, have sales allowances to, well, promote your product and make sure the products are available in each single pharmacy. In terms of the pharmacy corporations, the sales allowances, clearly, but also any kind of advertising and promotion materials, especially if you're able to give them some kind of exclusivity, they would appreciate that. So, and last but not least, the online pharmacies, they all appreciate exclusivity in terms of promotional activities. So whenever you can come up with an exclusive promotion for your brand, be it only for a certain period of time, that's appreciated. And in order to get a foot in the door, you should have some basic standard materials like banners, photos, text describing your products, etc. on hand. So that's the roles and the needs. Let's talk about numbers. So, and this is kind of for your orientation. What is the margin expectations that the trade, the pharmacies and the wholesalers do have in Germany? So let's talk pharmacies first. And this is an example product. Let's assume there is a 10% consumer, 10 euros consumer price. Then we have a VAT of 19% in most of the cases, except for food supplements. They are with a reduced VAT percentage. But for normal drugs, OTC drugs, it's 19%. So the net sales price is 840. And then the pharmacy net margin is about 40%. And that's, of course, on average. We see that going up in terms of cosmetics up to 50. Some more established brands go down to 35% probably. And in order to allow your company to be really profitable, you should aim at about well, if you're really lucky, about 80% total manufacturer margin based on the net price you're selling to the pharmacies. So that ensures that you have a reasonable payback period with all the and covering all the investments you have on in terms of advertising, in terms of organizational stuff. Good. So that's if you have in mind a 40% pharmacy margin. In case you're using wholesalers, wholesalers would eat into this margin. So about 3 to 5% of this margin goes to wholesalers if you're using wholesalers for distributing your brands. So as announced, I'd like to discuss 3 different scenarios for entering the German pharmacy market. And you could understand those scenarios as a sequence for entering successfully the market. So the first one I called, well, getting started. And one option here could be that you start with the online pharmacies only. So that would require you to have key account managers who are dealing with these 20 core online pharmacies. You would need someone to provide these key account managers with advertising and promotional material. So 1 or 2 trade marketing managers, somebody to overlook your operations, and basically everything else, like a logistics service provider, or a regulatory person, medical person, etc., could be outsourced. So assuming this, you would enter the German market with an online pharmacies only approach, you could expect annual cost for the organization, but also for the advertising and sales allowances on a rather competitive level of about 1.2 million to 1.7 million euros, just to get started. Then the second step would be, which would mean getting really involved in the German market. You would build upon your existing organization for the pharmacies, online pharmacies only, a organization with a direct access to a select number of these 19,000 independent pharmacies. And that, in this example, I assumed a minimum of 10 big cities. So that would mean 10 sales reps. They wouldn't be directly on your payroll, but they could be insourced as well. You would require a head of sales to steer this group of people. Again, trade marketing manager, somebody to overlook the whole operation, a general manager, and then logistics service providers, service for regulatory and medical could be all outsourced. And basically you could say with this approach, your cost would rather double. So up to 3 million spent per year would this scenario cost you. And then if you have real deep pockets and aim for a national distribution of your brand, 360-degree brand building, so digital, classic media in probably print and TV, etc. You double again to about 5.8 million with a larger sales force. Because of the number of sales reps, you would need additional regional sales heads to cover to steer the group. Now the cost would amount to 5.8 million. I have a big caveat to give here. These are the numbers for launching just one brand, but realistically, when you're building such an organization, you might want to consider either partnering with another company who also wants to enter, so you spread the cost across more than just one brand, or you launch with 2 brands. I think a good rule of thumb here is that a single visit to a pharmacy should generate sales of about 150 to 200 euros just to cover cost and be, well, cost efficient. And that's with an average price of an OTC drug in Germany of around 10 euros. Is probably only achievable if you have more than just one brand or one SKU that you're selling. So take that into account when running your own numbers here. There's in my consultancy, we often get the request to well, cost efficiently launch a product. But as I referred to earlier, launching a product and putting it on the shelf in a pharmacy does not help. So whenever you plan to enter the market, and I think that's not only true for Germany, you should have some direct-to-consumer communication in your marketing plans. It's not sufficient. The pharmacy assistants, in most of the cases, won't recommend your product. There's studies saying that the likelihood of being recommended for a new brand in Germany is about 4 out of 100 cases. So only 4 consumers getting into a pharmacy and with a certain problem, getting the recommendation of a relatively new unknown brand that is provided you have taken care of educating the pharmacy assistant. So 4 out of 100. You definitely need direct to consumer to make a successful entry into the market. So, and you should also consider marketing your brand to other healthcare professionals. In many cases, doctors are rather open, and we know in many categories they do influence also consumer decision making. So think about wisely how you spread and have definitely some direct-to-consumer advertising planned in your marketing plan. So let's have a brief evaluation of the 3 scenarios we've been talking about. So that's scenario 1, getting started, online pharmacies only. And you see here what other companies do in order to promote. You see here the banners. You definitely need photos. You need text content to promote your brand, which obviously costs some money. So the pros of this is clearly it's compared to all the other scenarios. It comes with limited risk because of the limited invest. You can start off with a rather focused organization, not a complex issue. There's no complex permits, pretty straightforward. You can generate some learnings which help you optimize your and adjust your go-to-market strategy for further expansion. You can even start pretty small with targeting only 1 or 2 online pharmacies and then expanding that that customer base. So pretty flexible approach. And because of the huge data you could get from the online pharmacies, they will help you sharpen your brand's proposition based on the consumer feedback. So in the comments of those who bought your product, you have a valuable feedback loop there. So that's the pros. The cons basically are you can, with that approach, you meanwhile can reach about 20% of the accessible market for your brand. It's decent. I mean, we're talking about a more than 10 billion euros market. So your access is to about 2 billion euros, out of which your category, the category you're entered, has a specific share, but 20% of the accessible market. That's the scenario. And I would definitely, if you have no operations in Germany so far, this is a reasonable approach to getting started. Then the next one is focused distribution, still limited compared to others. Limited invest, manageable risk. You can slowly build. You could start regionally and slowly build up the number of sales reps you have there. You have still a focused organization compared to the average organization, which is about 20 sales reps. It's still decent. And you could understand this scenario as the second step to widening your presence in Germany. So you have already learned a lot in the first step, and now you're rolling out to really addressing the brick and mortar pharmacies in Germany. And with that comes reasonable DTC invest that is required to generate trial, to generate demand. And with being present in the offline pharmacies, you also make your advertising money work harder. Because of the distribution, you would generate, you have more touch points with the consumer. Yeah, that's all the pro side. And obviously, there's some downside. With 10 people, you would reach probably 50% of the relevant pharmacy market, at least in terms of value. You definitely want to manage your expenditures here more closely. There's, in our view, a good return on investment possible. And yeah, ideally you have a range of products that you're selling that's probably consists of five or more SKUs, just to generate sufficient sales per pharmacy visit. Yeah, should be 150 to 200 euros that you generate here. And the biggest commitment to entering the German market is an organization that has the potential to cover the nation. Basically, most of the companies that the top 150 to 200 companies do have a nationwide coverage. They would visit 8,000 pharmacies, which are the top pharmacies in terms of sales, and they would have also a program, an advertising and promotional program for all the other 11,000 pharmacies. So they generate pull and yeah, ensure distribution of their brands in all 19,000 pharmacies. You would definitely need competitive spend levels, but by the time you're in scenario 3, if we think of it as a stepwise approach, you have already learned what works and what not, and could adjust accordingly. So yes, it's a high invest. It's a rather high risk if you would start without any learning phase beforehand. It could be mitigated by starting small or by doing market research. But basically, if you are, as a company, interested in entering the German market and gaining some of the 10 billion euro sales, then this doesn't come without risk and without invest. And there are ways to mitigate this, as I laid out earlier. So with that, let me summarize key takeaways. So definitely a large and attractive market in the heart of Europe, solid revenues, solid margins you can gain as a manufacturer. But in order to do so, that comes with investment and risk. And typically, we calculate here with a payback period of 5 years. So everything you spend in the first 5 years, you can earn back with sales after 5 years. Typically, a break even in an average category with an average competition, like probably gastrointestinal category and stuff, that you should look at a break even of about 3 years and a payback period of 5 years. Well, your approach to the market definitely should depend on the risk you're willing to take. And we clearly recommend to get started at a reasonable cost, learn as an organization, have market research and tracking in place. And if you feel comfortable, if you see sellout taking up, then also ramp up investments. A prerequisite in the market is that you have a solid brand positioning. And I think Ralf Arbeck just alluded to that in his presentation. Have a solid brand positioning in place with a clear point of differentiation. Germany hasn't waited for yet another food supplement. Sounds a bit arrogant, but based on the experience on the market, especially with food supplements, think twice before you spend and have a clear brand positioning that's differentiating, that's something new for the market. Beware of the following pitfalls. Wholesalers won't sell your product, they just distribute it. There's no incentive whatsoever for a wholesaler to focus on one specific brand. They make their money no matter what packs or packages they ship. They're important logistics partners. They won't sell your brand. Pharmacies don't recommend actively new or unknown brands. They are happily handing out a new brand if a consumer asks specifically for that brand. But actively, as I said, it's 4 out of 100 cases they would actively recommend a newly launched brand, and they would require some product training to enable them to do that. Another watch out is there's some organizations in Germany offering sales as a service paid per visit, and they are hard to control. And personally, in 20 years in the market, I haven't seen one brand really succeeding by using these sales as a service partners. So I'd always prefer a dedicated team focusing on your brand or brands. Yeah, and last but not least, build a solid go-to-market strategy that is tailored to your needs, your willingness of taking risk, and also your capabilities as an organization before getting started. But that's kind of self-understood. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much. Hope you found it helpful in case you plan to entering the German market. Obviously, we can chat afterwards, and I can take some questions right now if the technique issues permit. So thanks again, and have a good two days Pharmacircuit meeting ahead of you.